Hey everyone! So welcome to our live stream on immigration policy. I'm Julia Newman. I've been sending you many emails for the past few weeks, and I'm so glad that you're here joining us. And I'm joined here today by Hannah Evans, who's our lead lobbyist on immigration policy here at FCNL, which is a crazy broad thing. So she works on lots of different issues for us, but today she's here to talk to you about what you will be lobbying on this April with us. And we're so happy that you're here, both watching right now and also taking part in this course. So I just wanted to thank you again for all of the incredible advocacy that you're doing and that you're taking the steps to visit with your member of Congress for the first time. It's really exciting, and we're happy to be guiding you through the process. So here's what we're going to do. Hannah's going to give you an update on what's happening here in DC with regards to immigration, and let you know what we're talking to Congress about, and why it's so important that you'll be working on this with us in April and putting your visit request in now, because even that flags an issue as important for an office. And then we're going to get into the questions that you submitted and online, and then at the end, if there's time, those of you who are watching live can ask a few more questions. We're going to try and keep this to about 20 minutes, so I'll let you know. So Hannah, what is happening here in DC?
Well, a lot. A lot is happening at the executive level, and then not as much is happening at the congressional level, which is why it's really important for you guys to be talking to your members of Congress of how important it is for them to move on immigration. So I always like setting the context of where we are, what does our immigration system look like right now, why is it that we actually work on immigration. So currently, our immigration system hasn't really been meaningfully reformed for about 30 years. And FCNL has been urging Congress to take up comprehensive immigration reform for many years now. We work in coalitions of faith partners, we work in coalitions of immigrant rights group, of lawyers, of various service providers, and we're really focused on getting Congress to work together to come up with lasting solutions for our immigration system so that it's updated. What has happened over the past 30 years is that instead of looking at the legal side of our immigration system, members of Congress have been really focused on enforcement. The administration has been really focused on enforcement without really accounting for the fact that the system itself has become really unworkable. So we have 11 million people who are currently living in the United States who are undocumented and have no way to achieve meaningful status. They have no way to achieve lawful permanent residence or eventual citizenship. They're really integrated into our communities. Many of the people who are currently undocumented have been here for about 10 years. So this isn't a new phenomenon. This is something that we've been working with Congress to do for a very long time. So what's been happening? We have a new president, and on January 25th, he signed 2 executive orders that broadly expanded the jurisdiction and direction for the Department of Homeland Security to carry out deportations, detain migrants indefinitely as they're going through their immigration proceedings, and also further militarize the US-Mexico border. We're really concerned about these executive orders and what it means for our communities without this accompanying reform that we know Congress really needs to work on. Today, so this is fresh off the press, the president came out with a budget request. A lot of it deals with fiscal year 18, so not this current year, but next year. But there's a supplemental request that would really focus on implementing these executive orders, which again, starting the construction of a concrete border wall, a deportation force, and then also wholesale expanding immigrant detention, which is already mass incarceration of immigrants that we are really concerned about. And again, these executive orders are more of the same. They are endless enforcement, and there's not really solutions. And so there's 2 major ways that members of Congress can weigh in on this. A lot can happen at the executive branch, but this expansion of detention, this expansion of a deportation force, and the actual construction of a border wall all takes money. And so Congress has the power of the purse. So the first thing that really matters is that we are asking members of Congress to oppose funding this border supplemental that also increases a deportation force and detention. And we are also asking for members of Congress to instead support congressional solutions for immigrants that are so direly needed. And the bill that would really help with this process is the Bridge Act. The Bridge Act is introduced in both the House and the Senate. It's bipartisan. And what it would do is it would create a congressionally passed program that would allow for young adults who have grown up in the United States undocumented and have no pathway forward. It would protect them for 3 years from deportation and detention. And so they would also be able to continue to work. Many of these young adults, though not all of them, have been protected by an executive program that you might know as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. And we are concerned that this program could go away at any moment because it is executively passed instead of congressionally passed. So the funding piece is extremely relevant right now because the supplemental request just came out. Members of Congress need to figure out a way to fund the government through the end of this fiscal year by April 28th. And so when you are going in and requesting visits for April, they will be right in the middle of trying to figure out how to fund the government through the end of the year. And they might be tempted to fulfill this supplemental request that would fund these executive orders that we're so concerned about. So we're asking you to say, please don't fund these detrimental executive orders, and instead really demonstrate support that you are willing to work across the aisle with your partners and eventually come up with lasting solutions for these young people and for immigrants at large. So I said a lot, a lot's happening, but I am happy to expand more on any one piece.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah. That's great. So the first question is kind of, you touched a little bit on this, that, right, DACA is an executive action, but even though Donald Trump claimed that on day one he was going to repeal this, it seems like he's really backed off this claim. And so why are we still focusing on the Bridge Act as something that we really think Congress needs to pass as soon as possible when it doesn't seem nearly as urgent as it used to?
That's a great question. The reality is that the reason that DACA is still in place is because of this Bridge Act. It's because President Trump heard loud and clear that this would be a very unpopular action for him to take to really take the rug out from these young people, especially those who already have DACA protection. We know that he knows that this is unpopular, but the other part of the Bridge Act is that it is pledging support for Congress to really work on lasting solutions. And so we're still asking for Congress to make this a congressional program, which means that it doesn't have that volatility of being signed away with the stroke of a pen. And there's also some questions about the order through which it went through. And there are some real concerns from especially Republicans that the manner through which DACA was extended was unconstitutional. And so for people who do believe that, especially Republican members of Congress, but still want to find lasting solutions for these young people, the Bridge Act is a really important step to say, no, this is what we should be doing. We should be taking back this power and having a congressional protection. So we really like the Bridge Act for that reason, that it has already staved off the immediate retraction of DACA, and we need to keep that pressure up. And then the other part of it's creating a caucus of individuals, a bipartisan caucus, who are really committed not only to Dreamers or DACA recipients, as it were, but also towards lasting reforms after the 3-year expiration date.
Yeah. Great, thanks. So, and another kind of similar question that we've gotten is, there's a lot of different legislation that is kind of out there being proposed. There's even some other bipartisan legislation that's been proposed on immigration reform. Why is it that we think the Bridge Act is the one worth really focusing our energy and advocacy on?
So there's been a couple of other bills that have been reintroduced really just recently that pertain to Dreamers. One of them is actually not bipartisan, and so one of the reasons that we like this one is that it is, again, building this bipartisan caucus. There's a lot of other immigration-related legislation that's out there. A lot of it is either one party that is supporting it, and so again, we really like the bipartisan aspect of it, but the other piece is that it is interim fixes instead of this comprehensive look. And so what the Bridge Act does is it's within the title, it's a bridge towards immigration reform. And so we like that pledge. We like that it builds in some extra time, and we know that a lot of it will only come through working across the aisle.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so in terms of what's happening on the Hill and why people are signing on to the Bridge Act and building up bipartisan support, what really is it that is moving members of Congress to speak out in favor of, these immigration reform, or speak out against the supplemental funding that the president has asked for?
So much of this is constituents. I mean, it's incredible how many times I will go into these offices and they will say, the member, it could be with you, but we're really not hearing that much from constituents of whether this is an issue of priority. We're not hearing that much about positive from our districts. There's a lot of people who will call in, and they are similarly within this realm of myths around what the current status of our immigration system is, and how we move forward. And so individual stories of how immigrants are an asset, a benefit to communities, to districts, stories that help illustrate the brokenness of our immigration system and the need to work through congressional solutions are really powerful. And that's how we've made the progress that we've made so far. A lot of what we need to do is get people back to the table. This is not something that Congress is unfamiliar with. It's just been a couple years since they've tried to pass a comprehensive immigration package, and we need to make sure that people know that this is something that constituents care about, and really having those individual stories that they can lean on, talk about on the House floor, talk about in town halls to try and get other constituencies on board. And so it's just incredibly important for people to be talking about this, because that's the number one thing that I hear in offices is, we're just not really sure where the district is on this, or if we know, it's not good.
Yeah. And so one last question that we have is, a lot of the arguments in favor, especially of the supplemental bill, are that we really need to secure the border, and that's a really urgent problem. And what do you say when somebody makes that argument and says, security is really a top priority for us and for Congress and for the district?
That's a great question, and that is what we hear more than anything else as well. I think the reality is, and this goes back to the context, is we've only done security and enforcement for the last 30 years. What we have seen as a result, especially with border communities, is that they are feeling really overwhelmed by the oversight or the overstep in many ways of Border Patrol, the lack of accountability that happens when you have this wholesale expansion of enforcement without accountability mechanisms. And so part of what we are really concerned about with these executive orders is that they are largely just going along the same path. And a lot of these things have been tried before, and they didn't work, and they don't address the root of the problem. And so when it's security for the sake of its security, or enforcement for the sake of enforcement, it's really hard for us, sorry, just kidding. When it's just enforcement for the sake of enforcement and not looking at the legal side of it, then it leaves communities in the lurch. And so we don't think that secure the border is the answer to the immigration system. We think really look at the laws that are on the books is the answer, and reform those and create pathways and processes that don't exist right now for people who have fallen out based on punitive laws that have been passed over the last 30 years.
Great. So we do have a few minutes. If anyone can figure out how to use the chat function on this Google Hangout, you are welcome to ask a question or two. I am not sure. They changed Google Hangouts since I last used them.
Just right there?
Well, yes, but I don't know how to make it so they see it.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yes, you're welcome to submit questions. You can also, email me one at julia@fcnl.org, and I'll happily read it aloud. But otherwise, do you have anything else you feel like you haven't said yet?
Just want to reiterate, like, the timing of this is going to be incredibly important. So we just saw the supplemental request today. We know that this is something that there are people who are really trying to fulfill this presidential request. And we also know that it's not the right answer. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure for people to figure out how to fulfill these executive orders. And so it will be really important for constituents to go in and talk as they're thinking about how they're going to fund the government, to not attach this supplemental to any sort of funding mechanism for fiscal year 17. That will be incredibly important because that is seen as a must-pass bill. So we don't want it to be attached. And we also don't want it to pass as a standalone. And we just ultimately think that this is a waste of money. It's not addressing the root causes of migration. It's not addressing the brokenness of our immigration system. And so the timing is going to be incredibly important. And you guys are right there. And then the other part is the Bridge Act and other ways that members of Congress can demonstrate support. And it's not always fun to go in and say, no, no, no. And so the Bridge Act is really like, but here's what we think is the right answer, and is the first step in the right direction. And so we're very happy that you guys are here and doing this and taking this step.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Hannah, and thanks to all of you who are joining us either live or when you're getting this in your inboxes. We, again, are really, really appreciative of your advocacy, and Hannah's really right. The timing couldn't be better. So thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks all.